movie. Actually, it was a documentary. It had some reenactments, like kind of sort of like a movie. It's called Lover, Stalker, and well, anyways. So basically, Liz Golyar was convicted of murdering a woman named Cari. Um, that basically, Cari was for almost 4 years called Crazy Cari. Some guy named Dave Krupa basically was this casual dater, if you will. Meets this lady on called Liz on this website, who, by the way, was also dating a guy named Todd Butterall for since 2010. So by the time he met this woman in 2012, she was already in a relationship with another guy. So anyway, so she meets this guy named Dave. So Dave has a customer come in. He's a mechanic or something in a garage, and he has a customer come in. And so he goes on this website, and he just happens to run across that woman has a profile on this dating website. So they get hooked up, and he makes a whole lot of point to say that he is this casual dater, doesn't want anything serious. And so, but yet while he says that, he also says that the morning she disappeared, the last time he saw her, he wakes up, and claims in the documentary that he goes off to work at 6, but actually that wasn't true. In the documentary, he says, I come back and all her bags were gone. All her bags. Like, if there was two, you would say both her bags, but all her bags? That doesn't sound like somebody with a casual overnight stay. Seriously, all her bags? So she had at least several bags at his place, so she was staying with him, and everything's gone when he comes back. And so, but at that morning, she had the last phone call was made from Dave Krupa's apartment to her employer, and then shortly thereafter, he goes to work. And that's the last anybody ever saw the woman. So then, all of a sudden, all of a sudden, he claims to be a victim of this Cari, who was for a long time, for about 4 years, called Crazy Cari. So he says that he got a message from Cari saying she wanted to move in. He was like, no, we can't do that. And her phone was never found, right? And so, not that phone. And so he could have easily himself been sending the messages to himself, because she's wanting to leave him. For my problem I have is she was in the passenger seat of her own car, not the driver's seat, the passenger seat. So if this person named Liz was, didn't like the lady, then why on earth, how could she get this woman into her car? How could she get this woman into her car? Why would Liz be driving Carrie's car so that the victim would be in the passenger seat? So she died in the passenger seat. That's where they found the blood underneath the covers. Okay, so, anyways, let's talk about what the police did. I want to talk about the length and extent of the stalking. So, this is a NordVPN article. So, in case you didn't know, I know a lot of people talk about you can hide your IP, you can hide your IP. You can to extent. They don't save data, right? They don't like save whatever message you're sending to people. But here's an interesting thing about the NordVPN. I'm just sharing this to give an example of exactly how, hey, this is information that they should be subpoenaing on the behalf of Liz when they didn't file one single pretrial motion. Not one pretrial motion was filed by her public defender. Okay, so here's what it said back in, I think it was like 2017. There was a blog post. The NordVPN, while they're trying to collect people to pay them for subscriptions and make millions of dollars off them, they said NordVPN operates under the jurisdiction of Panama. We will not comply with requests from foreign governments and law enforcement agencies. And that's how they got so many people. They were, oh, well, we're going to be protected. Our privacy will be protected from the government, And it was a really way to sell. But here, then they come here recently. This was like, I think October 20. So they came out recently in 2023. But this is an article January 19, 2022, right? And it states basically that, of course, they're going to comply with court orders with law enforcement agencies, and only real, legitimate companies would, comply with court orders. But anyway, so basically, all they had to do to find out who was paying the subscription for VPNs is to just subpoena by court order the VPN companies, because maybe they don't collect the data like the emails and the data, but by golly, they sure do. have a user. They can get their actual IP addresses and their phone numbers, actual phone numbers, and all they had to do was submit request to see if, so and so and so and so was a payer using debit cards to find out who was actually sending the messages. So the point is, in this documentary, this cop was like, he's showing himself reenactment of using binoculars, and he did a stakeout because this Dave guy is saying that he's got literally messages, so many of them in a day, by hundreds of them, using various VPN, spoof mail, and all this other stuff. And they're saying they know all the details of every move he's making, where he's doing, what he's doing, the customers that's going in and out of where he's working. And I'm like, okay, let's think about this. If this officer who's doing a stakeout, if you will, literally sitting there for hours, the amount of time it would take for these people to do this, for this woman to have sat there at his workplace nearby to watch all the customers going in and out so that he could describe the customers. How on earth could she do that? She has kids and work. I mean, it just didn't even make any sense. And so the cop was like, yeah, we were there and did stakeout and we didn't see anybody watching them and we just couldn't find her. So basically what happened was, for about 4 years, this poor woman who was murdered brutally was a victim of discrimination, because as soon as this guy says, they'll go to him, it's like, well, the mother's reported this daughter missing. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, she just went crazy on me, started stalking me, sending me these messages. And he shows them, the detectives or whatever, the people from the law enforcement agency, the messages. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, well, obviously this woman is a nutcase, and so here she was. She did happen to have bipolar. She did have medication, and all the medication was still, uh, not, it was like at her apartment or whatever, which didn't make any sense, because do you know how many millions of people have bipolar? That doesn't mean they go out and act crazy and become a stalker, but just because she had a bipolar condition, they just didn't even consider the fact that this guy could be covering that up. He could have done something to her. They just didn't even consider him as a suspect. So get this. Did you know? I want you to listen to something. This guy, listen to what, this is 6 years ago. This is from during the trial. Listen to what this guy says about
during defense questioning.
Oh my
the defense
goodness.
pointed out that Krupa and Golyar had actually broken up a number of times, and Krupa never said anything about feeling threatened or feeling scared when that happened. He also pointed out that he had dated about 30 to 40 different women during that 4 years of time.
Okay, I don't see anything mentioned in the documentary about how many times that she had broken up with him, and none of that crazy stuff about stalking, none of that happened. Okay, and he's on the internet. This guy's claiming this woman, that somebody is trying to threaten people and doing very dangerous stuff, and yet he goes right back onto that same website to find another woman. I mean, while this so-called crazy Cari was still at large, because they hadn't resolved that actually she'd been murdered. So first they discriminate against Cari, treat her like she's just female nutcase, and so they don't even consider the guy as a suspect. Then you have Todd Butterall, who basically dated Liz from 2010 until 2015. Okay, and he acts like he never knew anything about Dave. Now, keep in mind, in the documentary, Dave says that, because of the threats, he stayed with Liz to protect her. So he basically used the stalking threats as a reason to stay with Liz. Now, how on earth did Todd not know that she's dating somebody else, okay, while she's spending a lot of time with a guy? Staying with him even. I'm just like, that didn't even add up. Like, he just to me, he was just not truthful. I mean, that's, to me, in my mind, that can't even be possible. But at any rate, so I just wanted to say that there's just no way. There's no way that they could not, if they had, all they had to do was get a warrant and a court order, that here's a woman who possibly had mental health issues, possibly was dangerous. All they had to do was get a court order to find out who was using the VPNs. Now on mobile, using these apps, a lot of them are sus. It could be other countries, it could be a little more extensive to find out who's behind, the spoof service. But even if you use spoof services, it requires a credit card. You pay for those services. So there's no way not to find out who's using those numbers. Okay, so it's just now when you're using something from your home network, your internet service provider, even if you're using a VPN, it's easier to track what's going on. Okay, so there's just no excuse for them to say that they could not find out. And I think it wasn't until certain things got involved, certain people got involved, and I think they just finally was doing some digital tracking. And the only thing they ever had on her was that, okay, so they told Dave, you need to go stay with Amy, your ex-wife, protect your kids, because we suspect Liz. We think it might be her. And so what's to say that they didn't tell him that they're going to try to set her up when he goes and stays with Amy, when she calls and she's upset to find out why on earth, somebody shot her. Why isn't the person that she suspected arrested? Well, we have to basically have a confession. They could have told Dave that was their plan, and Dave could have wrote that email. So here's what happened after the cops told Liz that they're not going to arrest the person who shot her because they needed basically a confession. It's her word against the other person, and so then an email happens basically making a confession, but it wasn't at her place. It was near her place. So here's my thing. Why on earth would they not have a freaking email inside her own home? If she didn't want to do it in front of Todd's, presence, she could just went into the bathroom. It's more like somebody sent that email near her home instead of in her home, because he didn't have access to in her home because they weren't together at that time. And here's another thing, that SD card that had a lot of damaging evidence on it, it was in his possession, Dave's possession, in his tablet. And they didn't even mention the documentary, by the way, that tablet belongs to him, but in the appeal record, it revealed that, in fact, that tablet was his possession. So why on earth are they just giving this guy a pass that, one, he has an SD card with a bunch of evidence. Everything that was sent was done, a lot of it while he was with Liz. There literally was messages being sent from Dave's apartment while they're both together. So who's to say that it wasn't him doing it, setting her up? Because he killed her. She had broken up with him before. There wasn't ever anything weird going on. But when he's dating this girl, then when you hear him talk about her in the documentary, he was really smitten with her, how attractive she was. And what's to say that she was in the passenger seat when she was stabbed to death? Okay. How would she go to all this trouble to wipe that car clean of any fingerprints and DNA? But conveniently, there was an item left in it that had her fingerprint on it. I mean, there was really nothing really concrete that proved that she did it. Really nothing. Okay, because a lot of that, to me, it was more like there's no possible way. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. I'm a stalking victim. If you've seen videos on my channel, I have somebody who is literally retired, who creeps in the woods at night and throws glass all over my property, spends a lot of time doing things that I have caught on videos. And I've had officers like, well, there's no way that this man's creeping in the woods, but I've caught on video. But the reason I mention that is because when somebody has children and you're taking care of your kids, or if you're working, you don't have time to stalk somebody. The amount of emails and the amount of time that was claimed, he said that this stalker, Cari, that he was accusing at the time, was mentioning all the customers in detail that was coming into his work location. He and the person that was allegedly stalking him are the only ones who could have possibly known all of those people and what they were wearing and this and that. So then you have to say, okay, did she have time to really spend all amount of time to sit there for hours on end to watch customers coming in and out of his work. I'm like, seriously? How is that even remotely possible when she's got kids? It just doesn't even make sense. Listen, I'm medically retired and I have my animals. I don't even have kids, but when I had people staying with me and I was, that did have kids, I mean, I just can't wrap my brain around how anybody can have time to stalk somebody like that. It just doesn't add up. And for him to have the evidence, okay? So here's that, right? So this is not, you can't not find out who is paying for the VPN services. All right. So I just don't think that it's possible that these cops are telling the truth when they said that there was no way that they can find out who did this. And I think they did a big disservice to the family by not getting this information and instead just acting like, not clearing her name, you know what I mean? And then they just didn't even consider this guy. As soon as the mother filed a missing report that her daughter was missing and it wasn't like her, et cetera, et cetera. They just went to this guy, okay, and said, well, you're allegedly the boyfriend, so we just need to know what's up. He was like, oh yeah, she's just crazy. She sent me this message. And they didn't even look further than that. Didn't even consider to get a court order for the VPN service to find out who's paying for those VPN services. I think they just discriminated against her. And so, yeah, I think that during that pretrial, that lawyer tricked her to not even have a jury trial, to just probably just told her, look, this judge will do what's right. There's don't have a case. No telling what he said to her. She didn't even have a jury trial. That lawyer didn't file one single solitary pretrial motion. He could have easily got evidence to prove that, in fact, during that fire, she had left the day before. All of these messages, there's no possible way she could have spent that amount of time. He could have went and got a court order, demanded a court order to find out who paid for these VPNs, because they don't have anything. The only thing they had was the email that said that, after they told him to go back and stay with Amy because they suspected her, the email was sent near her residence, and they saw that some of them emails was sent from Todd Butterall's residence. But it's like this: he's staying with her, Todd's off to work. Who's to say that he wasn't there? A lot of the messages were happening while they were together. While Dave and Liz were together, they both were getting messages. Okay. And none of the messages and stalking started until she was murdered. And they broke up before multiple times and nothing. So it's just, this case, they're just acting like it's just slam dunk. It was her. It doesn't have holes. It's all, and then just these cops sit up there and they have these conferences for victims' rights and talking about how well they investigated. And I'm just like, it is so horrible that they put this family through so much for 4 years and acted like they had no way to find her. And they're just lying to the public, lying to the family. Okay, I'm telling you what right now, if you're being stalked, if you're a stalking victim, okay, I'm telling you right now, they can find out who's behind. If somebody's using VPN or whatever, yes, they can. Yes, they can. Don't let anybody lie to you and act like they can't, because yes, they can. However, if a court order were issued according to laws and regulations, if it were legally binding under the jurisdiction that we operate in, and if the court were to reject our appeal, there would be no other option but to comply. The same applies to all existing VPN companies if they operate legally. In fact, the same applies to all companies in the world, NordVPN said. So that means even if they don't collect data, they can still give out the information of users. That means payment information and data. So somebody's going to pay for NordVPN with a credit or debit card, and that is a traceable information to find out who's behind what. And to this day, February 13th, 2024, nobody has contacted the VPN in the LYZ GOLYAR case. And that's what her lawyers should have been asking for. Anyways, there's holes in this case. That's all I'm saying.